USCFootball.com, I'm Keely Eure here with Shotgun Spratling for instant analysis of USC's Wednesday press conference. We got to talk to both of USC's coordinators, offensive coordinator Graham Harrell and defensive coordinator Todd Orlando. And the reason we got to do so is because the whole schedule has kind of been shaken up this week, starting from yesterday when Clay Helton announced that a USC football player tested positive for COVID-19 on Monday. So we only talked to Helton on Tuesday. And then after we did instant analysis, there were more developments. USC went all virtual for its football team. They didn't have practice on the field. They did things online. So they did some meetings, some game prep, stuff like that, but they didn't actually have a physical practice. So coming into this day, we got to ask Graham Harrell and Todd Orlando, what did you do on Tuesday? What was that like prepping for a game when you aren't there on the field? And what Harrell had to say, Shotgun?
I mean, it was basically film study and, doing virtual meetings about the upcoming opponent. But Graham Harrell was pretty adamant. He said, I'm a guy that believes in practicing a lot. And the only way to improve is to practice and get better at it. So if you're not on the field, then you're not getting those reps. And he thinks that it's something that's detrimental to not be out there. He said, he was like, hopefully they retain the information and that they, take in what we've given them. But it's basically just a film study session, and, they try to learn as much as they can about the opponent. He said there's a little bit of an advantage there, just try to prepare him for as many looks, but he feels like getting out there and actually repping it is the best way to get that ingrained in the players' minds and for them to get better with those reps. So he was definitely pretty adamant about it being a detrimental thing not to be able to get out and practice on the field yesterday. Todd Orlando, on the other hand, he's like, I'm a glass half full guy. Maybe we got out there yesterday, had a full practice, someone gets hurt and they're out for the season. Maybe something happens. So he's like, I want to try to take it, as best as I can and try to make the most out of it. So he was the glass half full guy. Graham Harrell was the glass half empty guy today.
Yeah, exactly. And it was kind of a return to what they were doing all off season. So they're at least kind of familiar with this, but it's just different now that they actually have a game to play on Saturday, at least for now. We haven't heard anything contrary to that at this point. But as far as the review from the coordinators, we got to talk to Graham Harrell about USC's performance against Utah and just asking what Utah did. We circled coming into the game that Utah played a lot of man coverage against USC last year, and that didn't work out so well for them. Harrell said that he expected them to play man again just because that's what they do, but he was kind of shocked. It sounded like shocked that they didn't really go for that game plan this time around.
Yeah, which why would you expect them to do exactly the same thing when you torched them on it last year, for one?
Yeah.
And they have a completely new defense. And he said that's probably why they did it, is because, they have 9 new starters on defense. They had basically their entire secondary is gone from last year. That's why they played so much man coverage. But he felt like they would probably stay more consistent and true to what they've done in the past. And with the new turnover, and also, teams have been game planning for USC throughout this offseason. You expect Morgan Scaley is going to, be putting some stuff in particular for USC. And you saw more zone coverage, except in some short yardage situations. And even then, they probably shouldn't have gone to man coverages in the couple of times that they did it against USC on Saturday. So it was a little bit of a change up. And I think it's not to be unexpected, and USC made some adjustments pretty quickly. Their first drive wasn't very good, but the second drive, they started moving the ball a little bit better. But it's just, again, it's the start and stop, the clunkiness of the offense. It felt like almost every other drive, USC was like, oh, good drive, bad drive, good drive, bad drive. They couldn't get a consistent rhythm of putting 3 or 4 drives together and really putting that pressure on a Utah defense and putting that pressure on the Utah offense to try to keep up. I think that's the difference that we're still waiting to see for this offense. And, Graham was asked about, this is supposed to be year 2 in this offense, and Keaton's supposed to take off, and that's kind of the talk all offseason. So where's that kind of been at? And Graham kind of went away from that question. He said, well, Keaton, what he's doing really well this year is he's been a leader of the offense. And, he hasn't been as sharp this year, but he's got the guys to rally around him, especially in those critical moments. He didn't really answer about why this offense hasn't really taken off in year 2. So that's a question that we're still, something we're still waiting to see from this group. we expected them to be able to make those adjustments a little bit quicker in games and be able to put up those points and those yardage totals together. Instead, it's been a lot of yards and not as many points.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, Chuck, and because we heard all offseason about the year two bump, not only for Graham Harrell's offense, but the quarterback in his system, and it just doesn't seem like we're seeing that so far. How much of that is because Keenan Slovis is off for some reason? And is it because teams are now used to, they have tape on Graham Harrell, essentially. They're used to this offense. How much is that an issue for this team this season?
So he was actually asked about the offensive line. I think one of his answers there kind of sums it up. He said the key for the offensive line is to be disciplined in your job and doing it over and over. And I think he feels like, hey, if the entire group does that, their entire offensive unit, then they will be putting up those points over and over. And I think he feels like that every once in a while, one guy's not doing their job, and that's derailing a play. And that includes Keaton. So I think that at times I asked about his eye discipline there, and he said, he stayed on a couple reads last week longer than he should. Clay Helton said earlier this week that Keaton was skipping some progressions. So I think it comes back to, hey, if Keaton is doing his job and being disciplined in it and doing it over and over, and the offensive line's doing theirs, the receivers, then they feel like this offense – it's execution based. They say that all the time. That's one of their favorite terminology when talking about their offense. So if they are executing consistently, then they should be able to roll up those points and roll up those yards. But we haven't seen that. They talk about, oh, on this play this happened, or oh, this play, this particular player didn't do what they're supposed to. So I think for Graham Harrell, it comes back to that, and that's why he thinks this offense just hasn't taken off yet this season.
Are you concerned at all by that, Shotgun? Because even before Graham Harrell, the kind of talking point we would hear after games is, oh, we just need to execute. We need to look at the film. We need to execute. And it seems like from what we heard from Graham Harrell today, it was shades of, oh, we need to execute. At what point do you ask, why aren't you executing right now?
I mean, that's every offense, every defense. When you get beat, it's like, oh, if we just execute.
Yeah.
Every coach is going to say that because no coach wants to admit, they just had my number. Every time I called a play, they seem to have the play call ready, perfect play call on the other side. No one wants to admit that. No.
Yeah.
And so it's always off. We just got to execute a little bit better. And a lot of times coaches feel like, I had a great play called there. I called this perfect screen, but we didn't get out and block it correctly. Okay, well, can you call that play with the team that you have, or are you putting your guys in a bad situation? And that's the hard part that you got to figure out is where can I put my team in the best situation that they're going to be able to execute every play. This offense, you should be able to do that because of the simplicity of it. That's the biggest thing. That's why it's execution-based, because it's not overtly complex. You're not trying to draw up something that no one's ever seen before. Yeah. It's simple concepts, but you run them to perfection, and then you just work your way through the reads, and there should be something available on every play. And you're not seeing that right now from USC's offense. So it does come down to that, but also you got to be able to put your guys in the right positions to be able to execute those things every single down.
Mm-hmm. Now moving on to the defense, we got to talk to Todd Orlando, and he was asked about, what is the difference between what we saw against Utah versus the first 2 weeks? And he said the team was just playing freer and looser. And that's something he had actually highlighted after the Arizona game. He said that he felt like the team was just a little too tense, a little too hesitant. What did you see from the defense, Shotgun? And does it match up with Orlando's assessment in that sense?
I mean, this is exactly what we saw. We watched the tape and we, did the film study. That's one of the things we pointed out is that, the read and react from the linebackers in particular was there. They didn't hesitate. They were attacking downhill. And I think that's what we've been waiting on the defense. We talked about the first couple of weeks how sometimes it looked like, hey, they're stuck in mud a little bit. The wheels are turning in their head, and you expect that a little bit with a new system. And that was, a product of it. We're like, is it going to come? How long will it take for that to come along? And we saw that in week 3. They were able to, attack downhill, flying around the ball. And he said, hey, we made some mistakes, but we were just running and hitting. And we weren't worried about those mistakes. Weren't worried about giving up that big play. And, they gave up a couple of explosive plays, some runs out on the outside. There were 15, 20-yard plays. But then they made up for it by going attacking and getting some negative plays and getting some turnovers. You get 5 turnovers, you're going to win pretty much any ball game. I think it all started with the fact that they were attacking and just, going balls to the wall instead of worrying about, making a mistake.
Yeah. And coming out of that game, all eyes were on the linebackers because of the improved play, but now the eyes are back on the linebackers for injuries again. They can't get a break, the linebacking group, or at least the inside linebackers. It appears like Raylan Goforth is still out right now. It sounds like Orlando was talking about Raymond Scott. He will be the guy to fill in just because EA still is in the concussion protocol. What are you expecting from that linebacker group and the improvement of Kanai Malga on top of that?
Well, I will say that none of them practiced yesterday. It was really
That's a great point.
Oh, wait, none of them practiced because the entire team did not practice. So we don't know exactly where Raylan Goforth is as far as his steps forward. Obviously, I'm guessing the players. No one came to the facilities. They said they shut down the facilities,
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure that they would allow the medical guys to come in and take care of their injuries and whatnot. So those are the guys you're worried about. Todd Orlando was complimentary of Raymond Scott, said he trust him, and especially with Colorado's defense, where they're attacking run defense, but also they have a quarterback that's a little bit of a dual threat. You're going to want a guy with a little bit more speed out there potentially. He said that they had, Raymond Scott was on their first team for a third down package. They just didn't use it much. He only played a couple snaps on defense in the last game. But I think that's a package you would see more this week. So even if you do get Palia Naitiote or Kanai Malga, I think you'll still see more Raymond Scott this week than you did last week. Todd Orlando was very complimentary of Kanai Malga as well. Said that he's always, he was asked about him, and he's the one guy that's healthy right now. So to bring him up, he was asked, what's the biggest difference for him? Why did he struggle the first couple of weeks and played really well? He said he's always been physical, but he hasn't been consistent this season. And for him to be consistent and, for him to start the game with that big hit on the first play gave him that confidence. And that was another thing with the defense. And I think that's part of the hesitancy versus attacking is they play with confidence. They went out there and said, hey, let's just go out there and play. And they produced, one of their best performances from a USC defense in a long time.
Mm-hmm. And in that sense, Todd Orlando's asked what's next for the defense. What do they need to improve? What did he have to say, Shotgun?
He said they're still missing some tackles out in space. He said they got to continue to work on that. They got to be stronger through tackles in the open field. So, putting that hat in the right place, but then driving through it and shoring up some of those small things. He said their angles could be a little bit better, but he just really loved the way there were so many guys flying around the ball. So even when you did see a guy miss a tackle, there were times where, a Nick Figueroa breaks through the line, but he missed a tackle in the backfield. That play still got stopped for no gain. They didn't get the tackle for loss, but he gets stopped for no gain because there's another two guys around into the ball. So I think that you can get excited about the fact that even when you miss a tackle, your teammates are there to back you up, and you don't have that worry that, hey, if I miss this tackle, maybe that's a touchdown. And again, that goes into the not playing with hesitancy. You're just feeling confident. All right, I missed this. It's okay. Raylan's got me. Talanoa's going to pick me up. Whoever it may be behind me is going to fill in for you. So you play with more confidence. You attack more. And I think that's what the defense was doing as an entire group.
Mm-hmm. Orlando said we need to stop the team from having ricochets off of players. I thought that was an interesting way to phrase it. But any final thoughts, Shaka, before we wrap it up? It was an interesting day to get both coordinators. I kind of actually liked it better. It was more, I liked talking to them. Any final thoughts before we wrap it up?
On the defensive side, USC's got to stop the run this week. Colorado comes in, with a really good rushing attack. And like I said, with a dual threat quarterback, that's something that, they've struggled with in the past. So we'll see how they handle that this week. We see some more spy at the linebacker position or not. On the offensive side, I thought it was interesting. Graham Harrell, I asked about Elijah Vera-Tucker, what it meant to have him back. He said, he just started glowing with a smile, that you can tell. And he said he's playing as well as I've ever seen an offensive lineman play. He said he's been the definition of consistent. And I think that goes back to what Graham Harrell is looking for from the rest of the offense. And he said, if you want to see a really good offensive lineman and what he does, go watch the last three games of tape from Elijah Vera-Tucker. Said he's been fantastic for him. And he's really shutting down that left side. He's making it a lot easier for a play caller when that blind side is protected for the quarterback.
Yep, the Graham Harrell gleam returned today, if you will. But that's going to wrap it up for Wednesday's press conference. We'll be back on Thursday, a Thanksgiving instant analysis. Clay Helton is going to give us the final updates of the week. Hopefully that means we'll see a game on Saturday. It's still TBD. You never know with COVID in 2020. So stay tuned for that. But for Shotgun Spratling, I'm Keely Eure. For more, check out USCfootball.com.